This is Gabby Ray Talker with World News and Investigations. On Friday, June 24th, 2016, it was announced that the United Kingdom voted to leave the European Union. While this was a defeat for a majority of Scotland, Northern Ireland, and London that made up 48% that strongly voted to stay with the EU, the remaining 52%, which includes the rest of England and Wales, celebrate their victory of British exit from the EU, or more commonly known as Brexit. Shortly after the vote, British Prime Minister announced his resignation. Prior to the vote, he warned Britain that if they separate from the EU, the country would be shocked with a loss of jobs and a recession. And as he predicted, immediately after the British voted to be separated from the EU, the British pound fell to its lowest level in 30 years. Although the votes have been placed for the EU to leave Britain, it will not happen right away. It's estimated to take 2 years from now to negotiate its departure. And I know some may ask, what is the EU? EU stands for European Union. The EU is a group of 28 countries which exists to promote economic security. It operates as a single free trading market without customs duties between borders, and it allows its members, citizens, the right to travel, work, and live in any other EU country. So did the British people make the right decision to separate from the EU? The question can only be answered by exploring the pros and cons of being part of the EU. Let's take a look at its advantages and disadvantages. So here's a list that I gathered of 5 advantages of being in the EU versus 5 disadvantages of being in the EU. Advantage number 1 of being in the European Union consists of getting low prices of goods in a quote-unquote single market for all union members with no extra tax. On the other hand, disadvantage number 1 of being in the European Union involves currency issues. With the single market, there is the euro dollar, but not all countries are using it. Advantage number 2 is that members can easily move, travel, go to school, or work in any country of the European Union. Disadvantage number 2 is that the free travel benefit for EU members causes overpopulation of foreigners in the major cities of the UK, and it has increased prices of housing and congested the roads. Advantage number 3 is that members can freely trade within EU countries. And note, this benefit has created over 3.5 million jobs over the years. Disadvantage number 3, for EU members, trade mainly applies within the EU. With non-EU countries, easy access to trade is not freely given. For instance, there are no trade agreements with the countries such as China, India, Russia, or United States. Advantage number 4, EU offers laws to its members to protect the people. Disadvantage number 4, not all laws of the EU are efficient. EU members must follow all EU laws. Members have no say in the laws that are set forth by EU officials that the people have not even voted in. Advantage number 5, EU ensures that the British voice is heard. Disadvantage number 5, EU does not give the members an option to vote leaders in or out. Instead, they operate as a dictatorship to control the people. So these would describe some of the advantages and disadvantages of being a member of the European Union. In addition to the advantages and disadvantages of being in the EU, I came across some additional information. In my research, I found that the European Union does not freely give information on how the EU is ran. For instance, most of its members does not know that the EU has 4 presidents, is ran by the EU Council, Commission, Parliament, Court of Justice. EU is also ran by the priesthood. So I have given a brief explanation of the European Union and have listed the advantages and disadvantages. In my original question asked, did the UK make the right decision to leave the EU? While taking into consideration disadvantage number 5 from my list, in this states, EU does not give the members an option to vote leaders in or out. Instead, they operate as a dictatorship to control the people. On that note alone, I would say that the British people did make a wise decision on voting to leave the EU. My only concern is that it will take at least 2 years to fully separate from the EU. Will they experience any retaliation? David Cameron did warn the British people that if they left the EU, they could face an economic shock, a loss of jobs, and a raise in mortgage. Perhaps the UK should prepare and maybe team up with China or other countries to help prevent an economic shock. This is Gabby Ray Talker, and this concludes my investigation in World News Report. Come check me out on my social networks and come see me at www.isoclassifieds.com. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.